to the races, my friend.
Yay.
And I will have to refresh. Hello, everybody. I am here with Chip Conley. I'm sure that you can see us as we are going live here in the Long Life Era Facebook group. We're here. Chip Conley, hello. Thank you so much for being
Marla.
here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah,
Nanny Bubby, or whatever we call you.
whoever, yeah, my grandchildren call me that. I know you love it too, so you can call me whatever
Yeah.
you want. I want to just make a quick announcement to the group before I introduce you that if you are here, you need to type I'm here or hello or hi or ask your question. Facebook will tell me that we have 15 people that have signed on, but unless you say something, I can't say hello to you, which we would love to do. So, with that being said, Chip, I want to do a quick introduction of you to the
Yes.
group because this will post to the group for about 4 to 6 months so everybody can go back and watch it. And I just want to say that Chip Conley is the co founder and executive chairman of MEA, formerly known as the Modern Elder Academy, which I did not know that that was a formerly situation. We'll talk about that. I think you're a serial entrepreneur, a best selling author, a dynamic speaker for sure, and you're celebrated for your innovative approach to leadership and hospitality. I call you a thought leader for our baby boomer generation and the generations that are about to inhabit living in their midlife and long life era, Generation X and the millennials, right? I could read all of you who are listening and about to listen to this, his resume, but instead, I want to speak about the soul of his man because his resume tells you what he does. I want to tell you who I find in this man. He's compassionate, he's courageous, he's loving, he's curious for sure, intelligent, and willing to take risks and share the outcome of those risks as wisdom with the world. He's giving and kind hearted and has an infectious smile. And this part I love that I wrote. I'm not usually kind of funny, but I wrote an infectious smile framed within the most adorable dimples that just make you smile back. He's full of strength and perseverance, and I am honored truly to have him here today. And so I welcome you, Chip.
Well, I love when people love my dimples.
Do you get comments on those all the time?
I do, it's funny when you have dimples, they don't go away. You know,
No,
you
no.
maybe you get, if you get overweight, you have multiple dimples, I've had dimples since I was a baby, and I'm proud to still have them.
Well, I mean, my son was born with them. I mean, from the minute they put me in his arms, I could see them. I thought they might go away. I don't know. And my granddaughter then had dimples that were just like his. And, you're born with them and you keep them for life. And it's really great. There's 6 people joining us. I just want to say right now, oh, 7 now. It's multiplying. If you are here, please type hello or something that helps us know you're here because Facebook will not let us know who's here unless you do that. And I have a feeling people are commenting, but as of yet, I'm not seeing it. So at some point, it will populate and that will be great. So I want to just quickly go back. You founded a boutique hotel. And because I'm a Spanish student, not a French student, I just could, you say it so fast that I could not figure out. I don't want to butcher it. So tell us about this boutique hotel chain that you started in, by the way, sorry, in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. It was a weekly hotel or motel, and you had
It was an hourly motel.
hourly. Oh, good God. And goodness gracious. I mean, you had to have some vision, honestly, to be able to do such a thing. So tell us about that.
Yes, when I was 26 years old, I was a couple years out of Stanford Business School, the MBA program, and I decided I wanted to, jump on what I felt was a maybe a long-term hospitality trend, which is the growth of boutique hotels. And so this was the mid 1980s, and I didn't have a lot of money, and I'm pretty young. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And next thing I knew, I had raised about a little over $1 million and bought a 44 room. pay by the hour motel with a swimming pool and a restaurant. And yeah, that's how I started it. I named it the Phoenix. The name of the overall company was called Joie de Vivre, which means joy of life in French. And I ran that company for 24 years and created 52 boutique hotels around the state of California.
And so the hotel itself was called the Phoenix, but the name of your company was,
Joie de Vivre.
thank you. Because I really, I kind of had to laugh to myself in the aspect of how do you put joie de vivre, or please
Good
say it
job.
well,
Good
oh
job.
God, um, in like the middle of the Tenderloin district. And if I can't even pronounce it, who could, right? But it was called the Phoenix, and that makes sense. And your first hotel, actually, you serviced the rock groups that were coming through that area at the time.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we still do. I sold the overall brand and operating company after 24 years of running it, but I kept the real estate for many of the hotels, and I still own that hotel 38, 39 years later and still gets lots and lots of musicians. And so I've, I've hung out with everybody from David Bowie to Madonna to John Kennedy Jr. to Keanu Reeves, River Phoenix, Faye Dunaway, Red Hot Chili Peppers,
Oh my
Pearl
God.
Jam, all kinds of
And what
interesting.
year did you start this?
1987.
1987. So, and how old? You were very young at the time,
Yeah, so I was 26. I'm now 64, and
right?
so I've had the hotel for 38 years.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And then, you know what? So we actually have a lot of things in common. You mentioned Rich Roll podcast is something that you were spending your time during COVID listening to. I have been just unearthed by his podcasts, and certainly I actually discovered him in 2018 or 2019
Yeah.
when I heard the interviews that he did with Dr. Zach Bush. Have you ever heard those interviews?
I
I
have.
mean,
Yeah.
those lit up the purpose of Nanny Bubby and that platform for me. I was sold from those two interviews that he did with Zach Bush. And also, I'm a three Enneagram, which I understand you a little bit better because I will tell you, I always say to people when I get like a three, and I will always say, listen, you think it's tough for you being in the same room with me? I mean, I have to live between these two ears. It's a tough place to be. So, but I did hear the interview. I was so enamored by the fact that I turned it on one day and there you were because I had been introduced to you through following MEA and certainly some of the online podcasts that you call them podcasts, but like interviews that you did like this. And so I began telling your Airbnb story about being hired as a chief wisdom officer for the last 2 years in the speaking engagements that I do, inspiring and hoping people will aspire to live in their long life era. So I'm going to let you tell your own Airbnb story.
Okay.
And while
So
you do that, I'm going to just pull up my phone and see if I can see who's here because
okay.
it's not showing up on the other place.
Okay. So at 50, I had sold my company, and it was 2010, sort of the end, close to the end of the Great Recession. And I took a couple years off. I had a midlife atrium, as Mary Catherine Bateson calls it, where I gave myself some space to reflect upon how do I want to curate the rest of my life. Because actually, based upon my likely life expectancy, I probably was less than half of the way through my adult life at age 50, assuming that you start counting at age 18, adulthood. And so after 2 years of that, I was asked by the three young founders of Airbnb if I could come and help consult with them and coach them to become great leaders and help their little tech startup, because this was 12 and a half years ago. Most people had never heard of it. And how could I help them take their little idea and turn it into a global hospitality brand? Within a few weeks, it was very clear that they needed me more than just a little bit of coaching. So I became full time and helped run the company with them. And they started calling me the modern elder, which I didn't like at first because I thought they were making fun of my age. But what they were really saying was, Chip, at 52, the average age here is 26. So you are definitely the elder here. But they said a modern elder is someone who's as curious as they are wise. And I really liked that because I liked the idea that I
Was
could
that
still,
their words, not
those are their
yours?
words. Those are their words. And they
Wow.
said, you're the perfect alchemy of curiosity and wisdom. And
And
that
those are actually almost like perfect wisdom words.
Well, they are. Well, the wisdom is obvious wisdom, where the curiosity, a lot of people would say, like, well, curiosity, that's what a young person does. It's like, well, that's true, but you can do it at any age. In fact,
For sure.
curiosity is like the fountain of youth. Having that kind of lifelong learning, what we at MEA call long life learning, is really important because it allows you to be a beginner over and over again. And so I spent 7.5 years there at Airbnb, 4 years full time, 3.5 years part time, and taking the company up till it's when it went
What a
IPO and had a valuation of $120 billion. So
Oh my God, incredible. That's a congratulations, my friend. What an
thank you.
experience, right? There are lots of people here. So let me just tell you, I was able to find them on my phone here. Glenda Greenberg is here. Cynthia Berman is here. Gosh, there's four other people that I can't see who they are. Danyan is here, who if so proud of Danyan. Done such a great job leading our group. Amazing. Judy Owen is here. My dear friend Billy Weissman is here. He told me to tell you hello. He has to leave early, but he's here. Linda Burnwith is her, Lavender Linda, in case you forgot, she says. Lisa Tansey is here. Lisa says, so excited about this interview. Sandra Zing is here. Gotta love Sandra. Tanya Murray is here. She says she loves the Airbnb story. She does because she's heard it 4 times. And I'm here. Yes, I am. Susan Mendorf is here, who is just one of our leaders in the group. She shows up for everything and anything that we do. Love Susan. Kemery is here. She says hi. And
Wow.
Diane Dahl is here. So we've got a lot of our what we call moral beauties. That's
Yeah.
the name of our group. You have to go to MEA to figure out what that is and why it is. I wanted to ask you a personal question because you mentioned this a couple of times when we were in group, and we're gonna talk about the group experience in just a minute. But you mentioned several times that you have prostate cancer, and and then a lot of men have prostate cancer. They say that you will outlive or something else will kill you before the prostate cancer does. But then you said, I have prostate cancer and it has gone through my body, which was heartbreaking and alarming to hear. And I didn't know what to make of it. I asked your permission to have this conversation with you now because I wouldn't have just sprung it on you. And I wanted everybody to know that. But tell us what that means. It's gone through your body.
Well, first of all, there's a couple things. Prostate cancer is a slower moving cancer than many others, and it is true that a lot of men will get it and not die from it. On the other hand, it is the second most likely cancer that kills a man. So
Mm.
it so it is
Heart disease being number one.
no, that's in terms of cancer.
Oh,
Second most, I think number one is lung cancer for men, and number two is prostate
prostate.
cancer. So long story short is I had stage one cancer, which means it was a very small amount in my prostate. It went to stage two, had some surgery, but not the radical prostatectomy. That was supposed to solve it. It didn't.
Did you have a simple prostatectomy?
No, I had something called HIFU, and we won't get into the details of
Yeah,
it, but
okay.
it was a way they burn part of the prostate where the cancer was. And then it went, as of 2 years ago, we found out that it had gone to stage three. Stage three means it's no longer just confined to the
Okay.
prostate. It has moved to my pelvic lymphs and your lymph systems throughout your body. So, um, for the last 2 years, I've had a lot of stuff. I've had a radical prostatectomy. I've had 36 radiation sessions. I've had 2 years of hormone depletion therapy, which means taking my testosterone down to zero. and a bunch of other alternative paths as well. So at this point, I do still have cancer in my system. It's much smaller, and I'm not on any traditional medicine right now or any traditional regimen because my traditional doctors say to me, like, let's see what happens with the cancer that's in you in terms of does it grow or is it dormant? And so right now it feels dormant, or based upon my monthly blood test, it's dormant. So let's see. I mean, but I do have cancer in my system still. And there's an idea, and we talked about it in our workshop, memento mori, and which is the idea of understanding the the finality of our life always leads to death. And the idea of understanding death as an organizing principle for life is very valuable because it means that you know what matters. You're able to appreciate your day-to-day, gratitude around what it's like to live. And my cancer has been a beautiful teacher. I like to think of cancer as a teacher, not as an adversary. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to learn to, and I've had four major lessons from my cancer journey. And then I'm going to be ready, or soon I'll be ready to graduate from cancer school.
There you go. Everything is a school. Life is a school, right?
Yep.
I do want to say, and then I want to get into talking about MEA for those that are joining us who had a lot of conversations. Frank is here. Hey, Frank. Frank never misses no matter what we're doing. Um, uh, uh, about what I did when I was there. I tried to post like when we were outside, taking hikes and some of the facility and things that we were doing. But I also didn't want to post anything else that was going on anywhere else for obvious reasons. But uh, I lost my train of thought of all things. But okay, I remember now.
Okay.
So okay,
You
I
wanted you
mean,
want you wanted to
takes
talk about the experience at MEA.
yes. But the first thing since you brought it up is the experience about death. That was really transformative for me. I mean, luckily I had somebody who was holding my hand, who was a very loving person and gave me great comfort. And I got up from that experience. Um, I mean, really feeling like I was on my deathbed. And for the first time, maybe being unafraid of that experience
Mm.
to the point where I came home and said, look, you know, I don't want you to have to be, by my side crying, but when that moment comes, if you'll just hold my hand in the most loving way and see me through it, I think I'll be okay with that. And that was, I mean, I never listed that as my third like huge experience. The other two were so big, but it was when I got home and everybody says, "Well, how was it?" I couldn't even answer how it was. I didn't know how it was for a while. Fortunately, Billy and Diane and I had a lot of conversations, and so I've come to figure it out. But that was very transformative too. So thank you for that. And
Yeah.
with that, I'm going to ask you about MEA.
Yep. Well,
Like,
so
well, oh, do you want to say
go
something?
ahead. Go ahead. No.
Well, I mean, who wakes up one day and say, "Hey, let's start the world's first wisdom school for people in their midlife and beyond"?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I was here in Baja where I had a home on the beach, and I was working on my book about my Airbnb experience called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder is the name of the book. And as I was writing that book, one day I went for a run on the beach, and I had a Baja aha. I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was I really had thought about some of my friends who had really struggled in midlife, some who even took their own lives, others who just felt stuck. Um, and I just sort of recognized that we as a culture have not done a very good job of helping people to understand how do you navigate the transitions that some of them very normal and natural transitions of midlife and how to cultivate our purpose in midlife and beyond, learn how to own our wisdom and reframe our relationship with getting older. Becca Levy at Yale has shown that when you shift your mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, you gain 7.5 years of additional life, which is
Right.
frankly more than any other form of intervention whether it's stopping smoking or starting exercising or stem cell regeneration or cold plunges or whatever you do, there's nothing that actually has that kind of effect. So that was the really origin story 8 years ago, less than 8 years ago, when I first had the idea. And then we literally opened in
But but my
6
question is, did you just have that idea while writing the book, and then how did you connect to your two partners who are part of this? How do you go to two other people who did not wake up one day with multiple discovery that you did, and how did you sell that, or how did you frame that?
Well, the idea was definitely mine, and I had a passion around it. Christine, who was the first person I talked to about it, had been a general manager of a couple of different hotels that had opened in the Baja area near
Mm-hmm.
where and she had thrown my 55th birthday party in the Todos Santos area of Baja, where my home was, for 120 people for a week. And so I knew she was
Wow.
really good at organizing events. So between her hospitality skills and organizing events and my content, we opened in January 2018. Our third co-founder, Jeff, was in the very first workshop, and he and his family, his wife and his two kids, had moved down to Baja from the Bay Area, and he was trying to figure out what was next in his life. And he was a great student, but he also immediately sort of became a teacher in the workshop. And next thing I knew, I was saying like, "Hey, would you like to be part of this?" And that's so but neither one of them, this was not the thing that they felt like they needed to do next in their life. The beautiful thing is both of them have really embraced it over time, although I am 10 years older than both of them, and 10 years older than one, 11 years older than the other. So in some ways, when I was talking about modern elder, and I was at that point 57 years old, they were like, I don't think, I'm 47, I'm 46. Like they were having a hard time with that. As it turns out, we have about 7,000 graduates now from 60 countries. And the average age of people who come is 54. But we've had people as young as 25 and as old as 91.
Oh,
And I
wow.
define life as 35 to 75. And the reason I
Right.
say 75 is because some people might say, like, well, that's not midlife, but there are a growing number of people who are working in their mid 70s. And if you're
Right.
going to go 90 or 100, 75 is still midlife. And when I say midlife, it's really mid adult life.
Well, I mean, I have that down as one of my questions because I saw that, I has been a student of learning to live midlife for the last 3 weeks in preparation for this interview. But, you know, the, so I read that. I mean, specifically, you said, let me just say this, you claim that midlife lasts from anywhere between 24 and 75. And I thought, okay, I'm 72, and in 3 years I'm going to be 75, right? And so what happens when I turn 75? I mean, do I jump in a box, claim that I'm at the dead end, and then I'm okay to get moved off to the side of life? Or are you really using the term midlife as a metaphor for those who are still willing to jump in, live with curiosity, vigor? How do you frame that? Because for us here in this community, right, we are calling from age 50 and beyond through 100 years, the mindset to live 100 years or more, in order that people don't get trapped in, like, with their teeth and their nails hanging on to midlife because they're so afraid to be a senior citizen. In that you say that the term midlife has a branding issue, but then I say, senior citizen has a branding issue and no one wants to get to that. So tell
Let's
me how you define this.
so let's be clear. There is not a piece of language in the English language
Mm-hmm.
that has a complementary positive frame around aging. First of all, the word aging is negative. Old is negative. Senior citizen is negative. Elder is held in many regards as negative.
Hmm.
Midlife is negative. So let's just start by saying we have yet to discover language that actually makes people feel good about their natural process of aging. I like
Really?
the term age fluid. When someone's your age fluid, they're not defined by their age or generation.
Hmm.
But that's a very new piece of
But you
language.
don't find the words living. You are living in your long life era. You're not defined. You're just living in it. You're just doing it.
But that living is a verb, it's not a noun. So
No.
if you're trying to define someone's age based upon the category of an age, you have to have an age to describe someone. And you don't say that everyone is living. Let's start by if you're not living, you're dead or you're not born yet. And there,
Right.
so to say you're living, you could say you're living your long life era, but that's too long. I mean,
Right.
that just doesn't work. So
Or we just are in our long life era. Is that a noun or is that still a verb?
that's still a verb. So that you could say you're a long lifer.
Yeah.
I'm a long lifer, and that would be a new one. That would be a new way to package a sort of a noun to
Mm-hmm.
describe someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but let me just say we don't have good language. So that's the first thing. Number two is 35 to 75 has three of midlife has three eras to it. There's 35 to 50, which is early midlife. There's the core of midlife, which is 50 to 60, and then there's later midlife, 60 to 75. So you are in later midlife. I'm in later midlife. These are it's like speed limits when you're on the road in Nevada, do you like adhere to the speed limit? Sort of, but not totally. So don't worry that at 75 in 3 years, Marla, that you are no longer in midlife, because you might say like I'm pushing it to 80 or 85. The problem with the language around midlife ending at 75 is nobody wants to be in that next era. Not well,
See, and yeah, and that's what we're doing here in this community is understanding that we don't have to hang on with our fingernails and our teeth to that definition, but that it is okay for us to just be who we are and not be a stereotype to be objectified once we get past it.
no one wants to be objectified. I agree.
Yeah,
The world wants a language to describe it. So
there you go.
what I would say is I get less hung up on the language and or the demarcations of life stages and more focused on things like how to have a pro-aging, not an anti-aging perspective on life.
Right.
A pro-aging perspective means you're focused on the upside of getting older, the
Mm-hmm.
unexpected pleasures of aging, as opposed to just the downside, because we do know what gets worse with age. Hallmark cards will remind us as well. But the fact is that there's a lot of things that get better with age. Age fluid means you're not defined by any particular chronological age. And we are living in an era where they can tell us the age of our heart versus the age of our liver versus the age of our
Boy,
brain.
that's true. Yeah,
And so we sort of like why would chronological age be the only age that might define us? So that's
correct.
why age fluidity has some relevance. Middlescence is a term that speaks to the idea that in adolescence you go through hormonal, emotional, physical, and identity transitions. You do the same in middlescence. Now that is an age that's a little bit more prescribed, probably around 45 to 62-ish.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you're going through the most significant, often physical elements of change for a woman that is often menopause. Um, so yeah, there's a lot here, but at the end of the day, the U curve of happiness research shows that after a low point around 45 to 50, um, people's level of life satisfaction starting around age 50 to 52 is on an incline to the virtually the rest of their life.
Hmm. I know. I love that. Here's a comment that I think you're going to love, Chip. I want to read it to you. This is from Cynthia Berman, who is a Airbnb superhost
Oh,
in Temecula, right in that area of it's actually Fallbrook, but it's Fallbrook, but it's right next to Temecula. And she says that she's so grateful that Joe Gebbia Airbnb founder, co-founder, donated $15 million of factory-built dwelling for the Los Angeles fires, including her Pacific Palisades home of over 20 years. So she lives in
Oh,
Fallbrook. Well, my other cousin
wow.
lost his home. I had two cousins that lost their home in Pacific Palisades, but she lived in Pacific Palisades for 20 years. And she and her husband recently left because of the insurance costs in
Hmm,
Pacific Palisades and
interesting.
they got out with their lives, right? And opened an Airbnb in Fallbrook on their horse property. And so I would say to Cynthia that Airbnb may not even be here today if it was not for the leadership that um, Chip gave to the company. So there's gratitude and
Thank
congratulations
you.
on
Thank
that. Um, so who writes the programming, and is the programming at MEA different for every seminar? Are there some things that are the same? How does that work? And I mean, it's so interesting to me. As I was going through them, and as you know, I gave up two like lifetime blocks that I had while there in that fire. And I thought, wow, who writes this programming?
you. Yeah. So we had academics from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and UC Berkeley help us with the programming. Uh, it's really been crafted by me in concert with my two co-founders,
Hmm.
as well as some of our guest faculty and facilitators. Um, it's very unusual. I mean, it's so sometimes you go to a retreat center and it's just a matter of who's your guest faculty member, and that's the experience you have. But MEA, no matter what workshop you go to, whether it's cultivating purpose or you went to a spirituality and health one, um, there's going to be MEA curriculum
Hmm.
in the workshop. What's different from workshop to workshop is if there's a guest faculty member or a theme, then that will be sandwiched in the middle of the workshop. But the MEA curriculum is really about, again, navigating transitions, cultivating purpose, owning wisdom, and reframing our mindset on aging. And that's
So if you come back from year to year, would you go through some of those same exercises again, or how does that work?
the exercises in the first day. Most of the exercises you'd come back and do those again. But the rest of the week is new. And
Oh,
so we have many people who come once a year.
hmm.
Sometimes people come. We have a woman who just went 3 times over the course of 2 months, three different workshops.
Wow.
Yeah, and she, she really, and they're very different workshops. She went to our film festival, which is all about movies around midlife and beyond, which is really fun. And she
Hmm.
went to a workshop on embodied wisdom, focused on the health of the body. And then she went on to a workshop on passion and purpose after a big success. And most of the people in that workshop had sold a business or had a big success, in media or artistry, and she's a famous artist. So yes, people sometimes come in as many as three within 2 months.
That's incredible.
We do have
You know,
financial aid as well.
I didn't realize, for me personally, I'm married 45 years, and yes, I've traveled without my husband. I went to Israel 3 times without him. But on those missions to Israel, as an example, you're, 3 days in Athens, 3 days in Tel Aviv, 3 days in Jerusalem. You're moving, Paris, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. You're all over the map. And so there's no rest. And I have to say that this is honestly the first time in 45 years that I have been alone in the same hotel room for 5 straight days by myself. That I have not
Uh,
done well, I mean, we've been together 47, so for 47 years. And I'm telling you that just coming and like my clothes were right where I left them. and, and and the bathroom was all my stuff. It was not moved. I didn't have to make I mean, there were the just I was kind of laughing to myself about how this was so new for me. And yet at the same time, and this piece, because those people that are here from the community know me as a home cook and that this is my hobby and that I share this with the world. And I will tell you, Chip, for the first time truly in my life, maybe since I went to camp, that I had somebody cooking for me 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
And it gave me such because every day at 3 o'clock I'm like at it. Like I make dinner every night. I have ever since my kids were born. And I like that's literally 4 hours of my day in the kitchen every single day, except for when Uber Eats started. That's given me a nice break occasionally. But but what a respite that was, to have time actually to think through some of those things that we experienced and how great that was. What a gift it was to all of us.
Well, and the food we're so lucky at both campuses with spectacular chefs.
Mm,
Um, and
delicious.
you could go to a retreat center, it's very utilitarian, but I think it was the New York Times once said, MEA is the Four Seasons meets the Esalen Institute, which is a famous retreat center in Big Sur, California, meets Blue Zones, the Blue Zones longevity folks.
Yes.
And I loved
Which
that.
is going to be true for you soon in some way with the new campus opening in downtown Santa Fe, right?
That's right. It'll be a longevity wellness retreat, and doing and collaborating with Dan Buettner. I actually was with Dan last week in Barcelona, giving speeches in
Oh, he was there
Barcelona
too.
with Dan, and so we're cooking up something good. But yeah,
That's amazing.
it's. I think what's surprising is that this idea of a place for people to reimagine and repurpose themselves in the second half of their life. The fact that that didn't exist previously is sort of surprising.
It is, but then again, you're a generator and probably a generator manifester, and so where you see a hole, you fill it, and that's a serial entrepreneur. And I
Thank
can hardly wait to see what you do in your 90s.
you.
Um, you call your book, Learning to Love Midlife, a public service announcement for a shift in the branding of aging. I love that. And there's health benefits, as you note, about Dr. Becca Levy in that reframing, which I love. You say that as we get older, you become more wiser, less reactive, more generous, and happier as we get older. That's the U curve of happiness right there. And then there's this quote that you put in the book from David Bowie. And I loved it because, man, isn't this the truth? And the quote, everyone, is aging is an extraordinary process whereby you become the person that you always should have been. And it is, um, boy, there somebody, the mayor, one of not the current mayor of Las Vegas, who I love and adore, but the recent mayor who's no longer in office, I've known since I was 15 years old, and she said to me when I was turning 40 and all up in arms about it, she said, "You know, Marla, when you turn 40, you will find that you will walk into a room and for the first time of your in your life, you will not feel like you have to apologize for who you are." And that started when I was in my 40s. But even I noted for me today, like I felt like, and I was, that I should have been a little nervous. And I was in talking to you in the community because I've admired you at afar, as you know. And it's quite by accident that we were connected and met. And I love that. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know. I'm just me and I'm just going to be me and I'll just see how it works out. And there, it was very, that statement of his really actually that you wrote about in the book really helped calm me. And it's a beautiful statement.
Yeah. Over
And
the
did he
course
give it
of our,
to you while you were in the Phoenix with him?
no, I was in the Phoenix with him, but no, he didn't give it to me then. But he gave it to the world soon before his death, and he died at a relatively young age.
He did.
Um, you know, it is true that over the course of our lifetime, we really understand ourselves. Like, you know, uh, when you're reading a book about, let's say a novel, about a quarter of the way through the novel, you may understand some of the themes, but not many. You don't understand the characters all that well. But halfway through the novel, you start to know the characters and the themes really well. And that's true in our life too. By the
Yes.
halfway through our life, we really understand our narrative and our themes and who we are. And part of our process in the second half of our life is to really explore and discover and then share the gifts and wisdom we have. Um, but we spend the first half of our life having to figure that all out. And
We do.
for some people, I think it's often really it's scary when you see someone in their 70s who hasn't figured that out yet, who hasn't really figured out who they are. And sometimes and sometimes you're embarrassed by the fact that the person feels like they're trying to be a 20-year-old.
Hmm.
Uh, and you really want them to say like, "Hey, you're ripe. You're ripe. This is the ripest time of your life. Just don't try to be the sushi, be the cooked meal, and be, the seasoned meal, and the seasoned person, that you really are." And I think, um, the more we help people to realize that maybe the best years of their life are after age 50, and the
Yeah.
data is very conclusive on this, the better people will own their wisdom and their.
Uh-huh. You say that we must be as curious as we are wise. Otherwise, it is otherwise. What is the point? Wisdom, and I love this line, and I know I must have gotten it from you because I use it all the time in my speaking engagements. I just couldn't remember where I got it, but I'm going to give you credit for it from now on. I realized that when I was up there, it's like, wow, I guess I must have read that somewhere from Chip, but wisdom must be shared, it cannot be taught. And what a wise statement that is. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And
And that's
also, if
part of
I
what
just
happens at an
what go
MEA
ahead.
workshop. Part of what happens in an MEA workshop is we create the conditions for people to have deep, life-changing conversations in
Mhm.
which they're sharing their life experience and wisdom with each other, and we're learning from each other along the way.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing because you hear in circle, morning circle, you hear everybody's movement that has occurred in the last 24 hours. And some is tough, some is beautiful, some is heart. I know that we had some very wonderful circles. I know you said it was one of the best circles you've ever seen, which was great. I want to say that you love this wild heart and adventurous spirit that comes a part of being in this stage of our life, whatever we now call it. I call it living in our long life era, but that's a verb. Who knew? I didn't, apparently. But maybe we can't name it because it's not meant to be named. Maybe it's meant to be lived. It's meant to
Yeah,
be felt.
yeah.
Maybe it's meant to be a verb. I don't know. But I want to get to one part of your book that um, really struck me. And I loved it. And it helped fill a gap for me in my wonderment of what I was experiencing while being at this stage of life. And that is pattern recognition. Will you explain that? And Frank just asked here's a plug for the book, where can they find your book? So let's first go to that and then let's talk about
You can find,
pattern
yeah,
recognition.
depending upon where you like to buy it, from a local bookstore or from Amazon, you'll find the
Mhm.
book there. The book actually, in January of last year, for 1 week, was the number one self-help book in the world.
Was it?
Yeah,
Congratulations,
it's
Mazel tov.
number one happiness book, number one self-help book. So it's very available out there.
It's
And
called Learning to Love Midlife.
that's right.
And I will post that in the chat when we get off so that you can all find it. And by Chip Conley. And it was a wonderful read. I was so happy. I know I was supposed to read it before I got there, but I just didn't have time.
Uh,
I'm happy I did my homework after class. Um, but so let's talk about pattern recognition.
Yeah, pattern recognition is another way of describing wisdom. And so our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. And what that really means is that along the way, the School of Hard Knocks teaches us personal, professional, emotional, physical, spiritual lessons. The ones that often are most indelible and have the greatest effect on us are the ones that are the most painful. And so that raw material, what we're learning along the way, allows us to be able to see as we are facing things in the future, oh, I have been here before. I
Mm-hmm.
have some wisdom about this kind of person or this kind of environment or this particular business situation I'm in. And based upon that pattern recognition, or the pattern recognition of, oh, I know I get triggered by this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a
And
good
so
one. That's a good one.
we get, the wiser we are, the more we see those patterns, and then we can be conscious about how you deal with it, as opposed to unconscious. And generally speaking, people who are very unconscious about their patterns are not very wise.
It's an interesting thing. I certainly have seen the sharpening of my intuition around people or being able to understand a situation where I see something coming out of that situation, like a business that couldn't make an appointment because they said in the month of February they didn't have the materials to do it. And then, another business had no problem getting those same materials. And I thought to myself, wait, that's a business problem. Like, I'm not sure that's a cash flow issue. I recognize that. Now I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but my instinct was telling me, I don't know about that. I think I'm going to look somewhere else. So I thought that pattern recognition, it helped move my intuition
Mhm.
into my conscious mind. And I think that was like one of the most valuable lessons. And there were so many in this book. I really highly recommend everybody reading it. But I really like that a lot.
Pattern recognition has a lot to do with intuition. Uh,
Hmm.
so, yeah. Well, thank you.
Linda Burnworth said, please tell us more about the Owning Wisdom workshops, is what she's asking about.
I love the Owning Wisdom workshops because, first of all, they're sort of like my thing that I teach. I teach a lot of different workshops, but the Owning Wisdom workshops, there are three of them this year. June in Santa Fe, September in Santa Fe, and October in Baja at our
Hmm.
campus. They're really dedicated to helping people to understand their life lessons, to see the gifts that they've developed and the wisdom they've developed along the way, learning how to then maybe share that gift or wisdom with others, and to start to evolve into a role of being a mentor in all the relationships you have in your life. And this is a beautiful way to sort of say, how do you graduate into being the wise elder in the community that you're in? And so the owning wisdom workshops are very, we also do heroes and heroines journey kind of work on this in terms of
Oh,
understanding the patterns of your life. And in those patterns in your life, what's the lesson that was learned during each of these different experiences in your life? So, yeah.
I love the hero's journey. I love that. Do you want to just spend a quick minute on hero's journey? I don't know what time it is and how we're doing.
Yeah, go
When
ahead.
do you have to run?
Couple minutes.
Okay, go
Here's
ahead.
really is a Joseph Campbell concept that it speaks to the idea that there are times in our lives when we have to leave the familiar, leave what we're used to, in order to listen to and accept the call to adventure. In that call to adventure, you end something and you are going to the messy middle, the second phase of this transitional journey. And that's often a time that's challenging, awkward, confusing, bewildering because you're not used to it. Think of Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars movies, because George Lucas basically studied Joseph Campbell's hero's journey um, premise. And then coming out of the call to adventure, you go into the third stage, from the messy middle to the new beginning. And in that stage, you go back into society, but with a new pair of glasses and a new sort of character that you've built along the way. Now, the hero's journey is often very focused on the external dragons that you're slaying, but the heroine's journey and the human journey is often more internal. It's like, okay, the dragons I need to slay are some resentment I have, or some sort of habit, emotional habit I have that I need to let go of. So this hero's journey doesn't have to be something that requires you to do something big and epic. It could be very personal. And so part of the thing we do actually in the owning wisdom workshop is we take people through their hero's journey.
Um, I wanted to say that the thing that I always note in just going back as you talk about that messy middle, is that I found in my own personal experience, and what many people have told me really was what happened with them, is that in that midlife, the bottom of that U curve, when they midlife crisis out, that if you can hold still for a moment and look at that midlife crisis, whatever it was that you didn't know, you now know because you experienced what you were lacking in what caused that crisis. And that now is the seed of where your wisdom grows out of.
Completely agree.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I've had two of those.
I mean, it's really important to know that out of that really challenging time comes this superpower, which is your wisdom. As we grow older, knowledge is not our superpower, but wisdom is.
Yes. And as you say, our intuition at this age tells us when to choose. We're using both more the right and the left side of our brains now, as you say. And life is opposites. So it's curiosity and the contrast of wisdom, yin and yang, extrovert and introvert, secular and spiritual, doing and being, right? I mean, as a younger person, I got caught up in constantly doing, but was never being. I think that's a big one for most people, actually. Mentor and or intern, gravitas and or levity, and that our wisdom as we grow through and out of that U curve of happiness, understanding that the temperance of life, right? That's what the Buddhists feel about as we grow older. You begin to be okay with the
Yeah.
temperance of life, and you relax into the intuition, and you start living in more beingness, and while also doing, if you still have
Mhm.
ambition, which
Yeah.
I'm forever going to be,
Me-
apparently.
You and me both.
Yeah,
So,
I can't wait to see what I do in my 90s. I'm all excited about it.
yeah, me too.
Well, thank you. I know just by the comments, and Glenda Greenberg says she's looking forward to her new read. Just got it on her Kindle. She already ordered it, and Frank will do the same. Lots of people here from our class and from another group that I belong to, and I am in admiration and love of you, and I really do appreciate and love that I came to meet you, like I said earlier. If this had been fly fishing upside down in the middle of, Aspen, I would have come anyway, because I just wanted to, meet you and talk with you after having watched you for so long. But I quickly got there and just was immersed in an amazing experience. And at the age of 72 years old, thanks in part to you, thanks in part to Billy, and to everybody else sharing. I had two of the biggest breakthroughs of my life, and I can't imagine at the age of 72 years old that I had anything left to go through. But apparently, these were really big for me and have changed my beingness in an astounding way. In an astounding way. So I thank you for that. And this
Mm,
is just a small way of saying thank you.
thank you. Well, Marla, I love the work you're doing. So,
Thank you.
and to all your community and to all those moral beauties who stuck around and joined us. That's our cohort that Marla was in.
Hmm.
Hope to see all of you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Stand by, Chip. Thank you, everyone, for being here.